Hello, and welcome to the Making Spaces podcast, a podcast about making spaces for people both literally and figuratively. I am one of the hosts, Sarah Heath, and this is my other host,
Josie Jimenez.
And today we have on the fantastic recording artist, Ivy King. And Ivy, you are so many things. You're a recording artist, you're a drummer, you're the only person that I've ever seen do bathtub karaoke, which we'll have to talk more about. But you're also a kid who grew up like in the church. Then you were a youth pastor, I believe. And you have done so much to make space for other people, not just in the creative field, but also like people who are coming out of church experiences. So I'm going to start with, before we jump into this super fun conversation, what is one of your favorite places and why?
Oh man, I knew this question before we started this, and it's still so hard to narrow it down to one place. I feel like the easy answer would be like concerts, but I haven't been to one of those in so long that I honestly can't, because 2020, I don't feel like it's fair to use that one anymore. So, with the scope and through the lens of 2020,
which is now 2021, so whatever.
Well, yeah. Echo Park, which is in California. Literally my favorite space right now.
Why?
Because my wife is travel nursing, which I'm sure we'll get to some of that. And I'm with her. And I don't know, there was just this feeling of being in this small little tiny community amongst a massive community, which is LA, that felt really comforting. And we were in a tiny little apartment, which we're used to living in like 2,200 square feet home, like whatever. But we were living in this studio apartment with our 3 dogs in a health crisis. And I have never felt so comforted. It was strange. I don't know. I could like walk out of my like studio apartment and go overlook the whole city. It was the most creative I've ever been able to be. I don't know. It just felt really good.
I mean, that's a great answer. I actually love that you said concerts to start. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast or not, but I didn't fit in. I know, shocking, to seminary, especially the first couple of months. I really felt like I always sort of liken it to Legally Blonde, where I have a degree in biology and psychology in my undergrad. And so I go to this school for theology, and I thought it was going to be like a giant Bible study, but I also had been like friends with mostly, like at the time they were called like scene kids. And I only ever went to concerts. And even though I was a total sorority girl in college, I also spent most of my time at some sort of alternative punk rock show or music. Like I was some weird stuff. Anyway, so I ended up getting tickets. So I didn't feel like I fit in at all. And I got tickets to go see, what's it called? Dashboard Confessional. I know, guys, it was a while ago. Okay.
I thought you were going to say DC Talk.
Oh, no, I wasn't that kid.
I don't think you're that old.
I'm not that young. I actually am like DC Talk-ish. I'm a little bit younger than that, but close. Anyway, I looked down at the ground and saw all these Chuck Taylors, and I started crying because it felt safe, and I felt like I fit in, and I felt like even like it was just the weirdest thing of like going from Duke, an incredibly academic place, and there were like, I just hadn't met them yet. There were like the indie rock kids, like they were there. I just didn't know them yet. So like being in that environment, and there is something about like, we've collectively agreed that we like this thing, right? And so I feel like it does create this weird space. I think about so many people who go to churches who they hate the theology, but the music makes them feel something. So I think I think absolutely concerts are a great space. And I love your idea of parks. Josie, I find it fascinating. So many of the people we've asked during this pandemic where your favorite space is, a lot of them have been an outdoor space. Right?
Yeah, I feel like when you're stuck inside most of the time during a global pandemic, that any level of being outside is probably super comforting, you know? And science says that nature is very good for your brain. Even a picture of nature.
I don't believe in science. That's not true. I do believe in science.
How could you? They change their mind so many times. It just doesn't make sense.
Science.
Science.
We're joking. Disclaimer, we love science. In fact, I just finished talking to my dad, who is a scientist. So I want to know how you went from being church kid, because did you start playing music in church?
Yeah, that was the first place I started playing. I got a drum set. Well, my parents wouldn't buy me a drum set because girls don't play drums. So I guess started making space for myself at a very young age because I was like, no, I'm going to do that. And I purchased my own drum set. So I think I was 13 and just started playing drums. And then I started playing at church. So that was the first place I started.
You purchased your first drum set for yourself at 13.
Yeah. I mean, like, my parents finally got the clue, like I was serious, and they helped me out after I had been saving for a while, but I did.
Sick.
And you started playing at your church. Was it like for the youth group, or was it for like the church?
It was in the main, it was in big church, but it was like a smaller church. I'm sure it was god awful. Bless them for allowing me to do that. Honestly, bless any parents that let their children play drums, because it's the worst. Drums are so loud.
Oh, yeah.
So bless the parents who allow their children to do it.
It's so funny because my parents, I come from a really musical family and very churchy musical family. So my parents signed me up immediately for music classes because I had an affinity for it. And I like to mess around, but I hated learning the piano. It was the first instrument I learned how to play. I fucking hated the piano. And then they let me settle on learning the guitar, but I also hated the guitar because it hurt my fingies. And
it does hurt fingies.
And eventually they tried to get me to learn the drums at one point, I think. And like their last ditch effort, like, just please play something in the church band. Please play something in the church band. But I only ever got to the singing part. So they really, were bummed out about, but they let me settle for singing, I guess. It's so funny.
I was the opposite. I played guitar or piano growing up. And the coolest thing about the way that we learned to play piano was in community. So our piano teacher, I don't know what he had going on internally, but he could teach a piano lesson to all of us. Had keyboards that had headphones, and he could walk up and down and tell if we were playing the right thing. Is that crazy? Yeah, he was amazing. But the thing that always kind of disappointed me a little bit was my brother's best friend. My brother convinced his best friend to take piano lessons with us. And my brother's best friend, which, by the way, we took piano lessons in this little town of Bracebridge, which is the setting of the movie Lars and the Real Girl. So like just a tiny little town, like super snowy. My mom would drive us at night to go to piano lessons. And my brother's best friend, who did not want to take piano lessons at all, is now a professional composer for film, and like he sat down with the books. So you know how disheartening it is when you're in one book and the kid next to you just like flying through the books? That was my experience of learning piano. So then in college, I took guitar. One of my best friends I'd played soccer with in high school, and then him and I went to the same college. He's now a studio drummer in LA. He's actually a pretty well-known drummer on Instagram. He has it's called Steven's Drum Shed. Like, he's insane. He like drummed for Mute Math for a couple of shows. Like, he's insane. He literally tried for 2 weeks to teach me drums. Ivy, this will make you want to pee your pants, because he looks at me, and I'll never forget, because he's the most positive person. And he's now a professional drum instructor, studio drummer. He can work with anyone. And he goes, I don't think you'll ever play the drums, which is really confusing to me, because you've got a lot of rhythm, but you're real bad at this. So I gave up. That was my making space for, turns out I'm not a drummer. And I've always loved like double bass. Like, I love the drums.
Oh, really? You love that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, God.
Remember, I'm old.
Yeah. I mean, that is a whole vibe. Like I cannot do that. I would never try. That would be the one thing I would never try.
Yeah, well, it's a very specific niche. It was like like alternative Christian music to like, I wasn't listening to DC Talk. I was listening to like Beloved and Stretch Armstrong and like
Right.
just that like Zayo, like grrr stuff. And
Under
I
oath.
just under oath. Oh, I remember having a fight with my first pastor I ever worked under, and she I hope she never listens to this. I felt like her and I just weren't similar at all. We weren't having a fight. I don't fight. I can't. But I remember driving, and I think music does this to us, right? It makes the space in us. I remember driving to meet with her, and the thing that calmed me down was listening to the loudest under oath, like "Rah!" song. And then I think, how is that calming me down? And that's when I learned I have ADHD.
Perfect.
So tell us a little bit about, enough about us and our musical ventures. Tell us about this sense of you're leading music. You're 13. That's super young to kind of get into the leadership of church. How did you sort of see yourself moving from a musician in church to now like a recording artist out in the world? I mean, how can you tell us a little bit about your journey of, because I think it's so helpful for others to hear how you got to where you were, because it wasn't a straight at all. Straight.
No, it wasn't. Very zigzaggy. Oh God, that's such a long question.
I can break it down if you want.
Yeah, do that, and then we can go from there.
Let's start with, how did you get from leading music to leading in the church?
So my parents got divorced, like right around that age, right around 13, 14. And I started going to an Assemblies of God church with my neighbor friends. And good old AG.
Josie's perked up because she knows the AG. Look at her.
Yeah. They'll suck you right in with their youth camps.
Oh yeah.
God bless them. So I really did feel like I've had a lot of deconstruction about what faith looks like for me in the last couple of years, but I really do still believe that I had an experience at one of those camps. I don't know what exactly I'll call that experience, but I do. At that point, I felt like I was being called into the ministry. Don't know what I call that anymore. Have no idea, but I felt a presence speaking to me of sort. So I also, there was a leader there and I thought she was really cute and she went to Bible college. So maybe that was it. Maybe that was the spirit. I don't know. So, I mean, that just like, I had an epiphany.
I went to the Baptist Student Union more than I went to the Wesley Foundation because their worship leaders were cuter. So I thought those guys, I think maybe sometimes our hormones lead us.
EG, Baptist, these are the two people that traumatized me the most. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm not going to say they didn't traumatize us either. We just, we signed up for it.
Yeah. So I ended up going to the same Bible college that she went to, and she was no longer there, but you know, I went that route, and I loved students a lot. Like I loved being around students. I couldn't imagine leading adults. God bless adults, but we're very difficult.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot.
So yeah, it's a lot. So I was like, I'm going to be a youth pastor. And I was very into that, very into it. I loved it. But there came a certain point when I started heading towards the graduating state and the like hiding the fact that I had a secret girlfriend state the whole time I was in Bible college, that I was like, oh my gosh, I am not going to be able to be a pastor. Because my brain at that point didn't know that there were other churches and spaces that were creating spaces for LGBTQIA+ pastors. So I went a different route after that and went into banking.
That's like
banking.
So everyone, as soon as you're done listening to this episode, hop on to Ivy's Instagram, because friends, her banking look, it feels a little like drag. It feels a little like it feels like Ivy playing the role of a banker. When you posted that picture, I thought you were kidding.
No, professional Ivy. She's a person. It's wild. I had a corporate car and everything. I mean,
like real banking. Wow.
Like like button up cardigan banking.
Like pencil skirts, everyday banker. That was
My
me.
worst nightmare. Cool.
Yeah. And but
as a creative.
Yeah. Doing that. But I did, well, so I started as a part-time teller, whatever, and just kind of worked my way through it because I was gay and closeted. Nobody knew at this point. And so I just was like, well, I'm gonna have to do something to be successful of some sort. And so I just kept working my way up in the banking industry and finally found myself kind of able to be in a creative role, which was, I liked my last position at the bank, even though I was wearing pencil skirts every day. But I got to be around people.
That's a great transition question. You liked your position, but there was something, right? That caused you to move out of it. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I had all through then, I was closeted. Nobody knew I was gay, except for everybody that knew I was gay. All the people secretly probably talking about it. But I was closeted, and also I started doing music super late. Man, there's a lot of things that were happening, but I didn't play any music at all at that point ever, other than at church. I was kind of playing at a mega church at that time too. It was a mega church, and I was playing drums there, doing the pastor or the banking thing. Then I went through a really bad breakup, and I started doing music because I was like, well, I'm miserable. So I was like 26 or 27 at that point, and started doing music for the first time in public spaces other than church. And so did that for a while, played in a cover band. I still play in that cover band. It's fun. It's how I make money. But I ended up leaving the bank at that point. 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I think I left the bank and went on tour with a girl named Chapel Roan, who's signed to Atlantic Records. And that's how I met you, actually. Mm-hmm. I met you when I was on that tour. So I knew that I was going to get myself out of banking at some point, because I started, I don't know, I just started opening myself up to other things other than the little closeted world that I have been living in.
Right. And that's closeted in so many ways, right? Like, here I am, you're going through this, like, I have a closeted relationship. I have a closeted passion. I have all these things. And I think the reason I so wanted to talk to you is I think the boldness with which you were like, and I'm out. Like, I'm just out in every way. And even if I am rejected, I'm rejected for what I really am instead of what I'm not. And I can't reject parts of myself anymore. So I just think I'm imagining Ivy first breakup, not doing what she loves. How does did you have hope for what is now?
Man, I was so miserable for so long because it was almost an 8-year relationship. And so it was basically a marriage at that point. I mean, we had bought a house together.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So were you guys roommates?
we were roommates. The classic roommate bit. We had 3 bedrooms and a dog together. It's fine. We're roommates. Totally normal. And so she ended up leaving, married a pastor, of course, the whole thing.
Like a dude pastor?
Yes, she did. Oh. She did that. She went that route. She did it.
Insult to injury.
I know, but if she's happy, there you go. I don't know. But it was like, back to my life, forget about her. No, but I was so miserable because it was like going through a divorce and nobody knew. So I was so, I just devastated. And I had no friends at that point because I lost everybody. My whole tribe was gone because I left the church that we were at, because I just had to. I couldn't do it anymore. I was so miserable. And slowly there started to be hope. And it came through people. It would be like random people that I would meet. My best friend to this date, I met her at the bank, the final bank that I worked at, and she was the first person that I told that I was gay. And she literally looked at me and was like, okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a world outside of what I was living in. And that just kept happening. I did that slowly for about year and a half, 2 years of telling people that I was safe around, that I felt safe to tell. And as they started to expand with me and grow with me, and there was several friends that I don't think understood it, but now are completely fine. But the longer that I started to meet people that were like, oh, this is awesome, like whatever, or I knew you were gay, that whole vibe, and it was okay, there just became a point where it did become I don't give a shit anymore. I'm going to be myself, and this is it. And I came out publicly on the news.
Okay, let's hear that.
Yeah. So I still was closeted at the bank, my very big girl job where I had 48 banks. So I would go to all of these banks, work with bank presidents, that whole bit. So I was kind of mortified to come out because, well, there's that, the boys club. And I got a phone call from a local organization, which was called No Repeal. And they were an LGBTQ thing that was funded through the Equal Rights Campaign. And this turns out the city that I was living in, Springfield, Missouri, they were trying to overturn a law that was giving gay people rights. They were trying to overturn, housing. So basically they were trying to take it away. Right. And they contacted me because the giant church that was Assemblies of God in the area and the Assemblies of God in Springfield, which is the Mecca of the AG, was the main funding for coming against gay people. They found out I was gay. They knew that I went to Central Bible College, and so they contacted me. They knew I knew John Lindell, which was the mega church pastor. I had done promotional videos with him and things in the past. And so they knew I knew him. They knew I had a relationship with them, and they exploited me for a very good purpose. And
Holy.
And so I just was like, they were like, were you willing to tell your story? And I was like, you know what? No time like the present. And I came out on local television. So
Fuck it.
So anybody who didn't know at that point, they got a really great awakening in the paper and on the local television. So, and then it was like reposted all over, my Facebook and stuff, which honestly has been awesome because it was a quick blow. And anybody who knew me at Bible college and such kind of have hung on to see like what the shitstorm was going to be and have gotten to watch my life kind of evolve, which has been really interesting. So
I think that's you had the worst happen, like the worst case scenario, right? Like I think when people, in some ways, you had the safest thing happen. I am always astounded when people are willing to share with me, when they come out to me, I often am like, gosh, what an honor. Like what sacred space. Why I just appreciate that you found me safe. And they say, yeah, your non-anxious presence around this makes it easier. And it's like as many experiences as I have as when I have with you, when I say this big thing that feels like I'm going to be shunned. And then the experience is, nope. Like I've actually had someone reflect to me that my response was so shocking to them because it was the same as the one you talk about where you went, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I know that's your girlfriend, not your friend. Or right. Another one was like, hey, I outed my friend by saying to him, hey, my friend's into you. You don't have to date him. I'm not sure he's a Christian. I know that really matters to you. And he was like, wait, what? He's like, and you're fine with this? I was like, yeah. Also, like, you don't have to date him. And he was like, no, wait, let's return to where, and now he's living this beautiful outed life with an incredible partner and just such beauty. But the thing that they often say is my worst fear is that everyone will find out at once and I won't be able to have that personal encounter. Right. And so you walk around in fear. And I think anytime we have anything that we're holding in, whatever it is, whatever our secret is, Like I can't imagine, you know, you hear these stories about people who murdered someone like 20 years ago and like I couldn't do it. But carrying that around and then to experience the worst, but the next morning Ivy wakes up and she's still breathing and she's still got a lot to give to the world and there's still people standing with you. And yeah, some of them are spectators who are like waiting to see what will happen in the shit show. And some of them are honestly fans going, all right, now let's see what blooms. So I think
Right.
sometimes we have to step into that like, oh my gosh thing.
Yeah, it was so scary. It's horrifying. And I know I still have gay people that now reach out to me that I went to school with, and like, which has been so honor, like it's such an honor to me that somebody would trust me with that. I mean, you get it. Like, it's just, especially somebody who's so mortified because they have so much to lose.
Yeah.
We feel like we have so much to lose, and we do. I mean, you lose a lot sometimes, but there's just so much more to gain on the other side. I can say that from personal experience. My life is, I look back and I'm like, who was that person? Like, I can't believe I was so oppressed and closeted, and like anybody else could control my life. Like, yeah, it feels good, but it is very scary. But it's wonderful to hear other people like that I went to school with, or just kids that find me on the internet and they're like, hey, this is my story, I'm scared to come out, how do I do this? Or, you know, is my life going to end if I tell people this? And the answer is no, but you have to make yourself feel safe. And finding a couple people who will make space for you, it is all the difference for me. At least it was. So
Yeah,
And then
I
your
think
life,
that's.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry, Josie.
No, I was just gonna say that I think that's the most interesting part of being like the bold and the brave, right? They say a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, why are you so?" A lot of old people, why are you so out there? Why do you have to be so like bold with your beliefs? Why do you have to keep telling everybody that you do this or that, or you are this or that? And then you get like these messages from people saying like, I have been so empowered because you have been yourself and you dared to be brave. And a lot of times because of social media, we don't really think that anybody's really listening or paying attention until you get the one person that's like, you really made it so safe for me to come out, or made it so safe for me to be myself. And I think that that's what your story kind of comes to be, right? Is like you made it safe for other people to come out or to consider coming out at the very least. Does that inform your art at all?
yes, I think so. My art by myself is still so new. So you guys were talking about piano lessons earlier, and man, I wish my parents would have made me do that, because drums don't make music. Like, they make loud noises and then they fit into the music most of the time, and then they become like the best part of the music, in my opinion. But you have to have the other stuff with it, or else it's not working. So when I've been playing drums for bands, whatever. After I toured with that girl from Atlantic Records, I was like, I really want to do something by myself. Through a lot of therapy, I realized that I had a lot of codependent things that I needed to work through. And I'd really never done anything fully all by myself. I had been in an 8-year relationship. I had been letting everyone's opinions control how I lived my life, being closeted, etc. And so I was just like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm going to be an artist all by myself. I'm writing everything myself. I'm playing all of the instruments. I'm doing all of it. And so I asked for a keyboard for Christmas, it would have been 2018. Got a keyboard.
That short time ago?
Yeah.
Stop it. Okay. Well, all right.
So I got my keyboard, which, you know, would have been January 2019, really, and started practicing, and released my first single in 2020. And I did all the music for it, wrote all the lyrics.
It's so fun and so good, guys. It really, really is. Like, and
Thank you.
yeah, she's my friend and I knew her before this, but you know how like you trepidatiously listen to your friend's work and you're like, ooh, what if it's not great? And I've
It's
always like,
bad.
I've always dug like your style and stuff. So I'm like, and I've heard your stuff, but it was all cover stuff. So I was like, all right, here we go. And then I was like, oh no, this is like really good. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's like my first, and it's horrifying to do that. Like, it's like coming out. It's exactly like that, because you're putting, which anybody who's doing art or creating, especially from within yourself, and you're not doing covers or whatever, it's horrifying because it's all you. But I wanted this, I needed that to be 100% myself, like, which felt really good. I'm proud of it. I definitely like want to keep expanding and want it to change and get better and, you know, all of that stuff. But like, I listen back to it still. I think I wrote it like almost a year ago. I'm like, oh, I still really like that song. Like, it represents how I felt at the time. So
I love
yeah.
I love too the metaphor of like being in a cover band and being closeted, right?
Right.
Like you're doing it all right, but it's just not coming from who you are. And then to come out, you're married now. How long have you guys been married?
3.5. We'll be married 4 years in June. Hold
Cute.
on. Shelby, have we been married for 3.5 years? Okay. Yes.
I love that Shelby handles that information.
Yeah. She goes, yeah, which either means like, I'm going to kill you when you get off of this, or like, I'm having to think about this too.
Either way,
I mean, you
cute.
guys, yeah, either way, it's so funny that you say this idea of, Josie mentioned that like you being fully you allows other people to be fully them. So when I started this position, I met two women who they met each other at church. Neither of them were particularly out. One of them, I would say, is one of those people that you were like, I'm pretty sure most people had a feeling. And the other one is very much like, wow, that's awesome. Don't fit any of the stereotypes.
Right.
And both of them had grown up in very religious. So when they told their pastor that they were together, I thought their concern was that they're very different. One is very sporty spice outdoorsy, and the other one is very businesswoman. Um, you know, but they're so, I think, you know, they were asking me, what do I think about it? I'm like, well, you guys are really different, but I like feel like, you know, it's kind of neat. Like you bring out these things in each other. And the one girl was like, that's your thing. And then her whole thing was like, you know, a couple years into the relationship, she said, it's really hard for me to imagine our marriage because we both, like a wedding, because we both sort of have a more feminine style, even though we both, right? And I literally used your wedding photos to be like, you can just be yourself and nobody has to wait. Like, there is no rule. And I actually used you as an example of like, here's a couple I know, they're super both adorable. Not one of them has decided to not be adorable. They're just being themselves. And they both were like, oh, and I think they follow you guys on Instagram and you don't know
That's
them.
awesome.
They're getting married this next year. They just got engaged.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like, we both were like, we want to wear dresses. We both wanted to walk down the aisle. So we just had to get very creative with that. So we both walked down the aisle together with our dads, all four of us, linked arms, and it was really precious.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh, their wedding photos are beautiful.
It was fun.
Beautiful.
And also, I wanted it, so that is the thing, if we're talking about creating spaces exactly how we want them to be or whatever. I am such a perfectionist as far as like timelines, especially for like a party or anything like that. I'm like, this has to be perfect. I've worked in a church, so I know how to do a service. Like, this has to happen. And so, well, and mega church, so there's that. So I was really, you know, dedicated to the timeline, but I didn't want that to happen at our ceremony because I have a problem with disassociating. Thank you very much, trauma. So I knew that about myself, and I was like, we're not doing chairs. I only wanted like 2 people there, but Shelby was like, I really would like my family there. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever you want. So we had family, our close friends, and we stood in the middle of the field that was at her parents' house. And Did I say no chairs? I didn't want chairs. I didn't want music. I didn't want any decorations, because I knew if anything went wrong, I would be thinking about that rather than thinking about marrying my partner. And so we only had one little thing to stand underneath, and it was amazing. And then we had a party later, and it was epic. We did Wedstock theme, and we had like 4 bands play. Her dad made us a stage, and we got shit-faced.
The dream, the whole dream.
It was so fun. It was great. And we slept in a tent that night. And other people slept in tents. It was so fun. So
that's what you can do when you have a giant field. So Josie had a wonderful wedding planned. Her and her partner, his family, everyone. I mean, it was right. And then COVID hit. So then she got married in front of our church so that they were married. And now they're planning an epic redo.
I mean, it's already planned. That's the worst part about the wedding, is that at this point I would kind of say, fuck it, I don't need it. But it's all paid for. So you kind of gotta have it. But it's pretty similar. We're getting married in the middle of the desert. Awesome. And it's super casual because I don't like weddings.
Me neither.
Says the girl who's super good at wedding photography.
Did you, Josie, did you like that plans changed and it was just in front of a church? Was it more sacred for you? Was it different, better?
Yeah, I enjoyed not having to deal with my mother in the planning process for that. My mom is very bougie, and I'm very not. I don't really care. She had this huge problem with me getting married in the desert as opposed to a venue, you know, and having this giant princess gown and having everything all nice and prim and proper with flowers everywhere. And I came up and was like, well, actually, we're getting married in the desert, and there's going to be lots of people getting shit-faced. So I hope you're all right with that. And she is not all right with alcohol. So it's a huge issue. But also there's 450 people invited. So not a lot of venues accommodate that for no money. And I'm paying for this shit. So, you know, I'm doing what I want.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot more sacred in the sense that I liked that it was thrown together. It was super last minute. And I hadn't even considered getting married in front of our church until I was talking to Sarah about it. And she's like, why don't you just get married here? And I was like, oh yeah, I work here. I can do what I want. I got keys to the place.
I can get married in the middle of the night if I want.
Yeah.
I mean, I can always get married. Like, I legally could just, hey, you, me, let's do this. I'll sign the thing.
Yeah.
Sarah, why haven't you been doing that? You could get married so many times.
I tell you.
Yeah. But it was cute that it was just our parents and then some of our closest friends, and Sarah was there. It was super small. Everybody stood up. We just did the thing. My friend married us because he was a pastor at the time, and he didn't use any submit to your husband language or anything of the nature. So it was pretty sweet. My mom was not happy. My mother wore white to my little wedding. So, you know.
So that was my introduction to Josie's mom. I was like, oh, and again, I didn't know that we were getting out of our cars because this was very early in the start of the pandemic. So I wanted to just honor Josie's family, but I wanted to be there because at this point, Josie and I's friendship and work relationship was I just wanted to see it. You know, I just wanted to be there for it. So like in my car, but I'm like, I don't want to interrupt. And out gets this, her mom is a gorgeous, beautiful woman in a white dress. And I was like, oh no. Like my first instinct, having been a bridesmaid 7 times and a maid of honor twice, my reaction was like, oh no. Like I wanted to,
it wasn't like floral
tackle
white.
Your
it was
mom.
Like white.
No, yes. And everybody else was a little bit more casual. But your mom came and brought it. And I think that makes sense.
She needed somebody to do it. Somebody had to show up. Herself. Yeah. She's like, well, if nobody's going to be a bride today, I will.
Yeah. And it was funny because she's like, I didn't even notice. And I was like, okay, but everybody else did here. Everybody told her something because it's all family. And she was pretty upset about it by the end of the day. It's like, well, you were the one that wore white. And I was like, typical mom. It didn't really bother me. It was just like, ugh, great. And on Facebook, of course, the pictures are going to get posted. And that's the first thing all of my extended family noticed. Like, your mom wore fucking white to your wedding. That is such, of course she did. Why would she do anything other than that to you? I was like, I don't know. Fuck it.
Well, and I think that's the thing about both of you talking about knowing what spaces that you want to own and be like, this is the space and this is how I want it to be. If that was Josie's dream wedding, like you were talking about, if anything went wrong with this image that you had of it, Ivy, it would have like taken you out of it. And I think the same for Josie. Like, it's fine that her mom did that because that wasn't her deal anyway. And I think that's how you've dealt with it, right? It's like, okay, this isn't my space fully anyway, so I'm gonna be okay with it being whatever it is. So it's really fun to just know space makers like you guys who are like, I'm just gonna be me and see what that does. And I think it frees people up to do the same thing. Like I think you're one of like very few people we were just friends online. It was like the weirdest thing. Like, I don't even actually know how we became friends online, but we just were friends.
I don't
And when
either.
you're like, I'm in town, I'm like, sweet, let's meet up. Like, it wasn't any like, it was just sort of like an old, I cannot explain it, but it just felt like you were so comfortable being yourself that it frees me up to be myself. I don't have to be your pastor. I'm just your friend. Like, it's just such a gift that people so rarely take time to recognize in themselves and others, just the ability to free space up. So I'm grateful for you. And what are you excited about? We have one more closing question, but before we get there, I do want to know, like, as you continue, like, you've got this crazy thing where your wife is a nurse and you guys were going to travel nurse before COVID broke out, right? Like you had been talking about this for a while and then COVID breaks out and her first assignments have been in these major affected areas. Whew, what has that been like? And then kind of what do you see kind of the next iteration of how you guys are going to do life for a little bit?
Oh boy. So we decided we were going to travel. And it was kind of one of those things where we were just like, fuck it, we can do whatever we want, which was another great example of us just doing whatever we wanted, which is awesome. We planned it all out and we were like, we're going to LA. We get there. We were just going to be there for 3 months. And we get there. It was a terrible hospital, for one. Kaiser.
I love Kaiser.
Poor those people get really terrible health care. We all know that.
Yeah.
So so she got there and she was like, this hospital's terrible already before COVID. And then COVID hit. And so she ended up working in a COVID unit, like the whole thing, you know, not having masks at work, wearing trash bags as PPE. It was wild. I cried a lot. I've never been upset about her going to work. I cried every day, which is so not me. Like, I'm always like, everything's going to be fine. And I was just like, is everything going to be fine? My job obviously stopped because I was going to be flying back and forth to my cover band in Missouri. And I was flying back and forth from February. I guess it was a month. I flew back and forth and then, you know, that kind of stopped. So yeah, it was pretty wild her being in that environment. She still hasn't really, she's told me some stuff, but I think she's still experiencing a lot of PTSD from it.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot. And like she talked to her therapist probably a month ago, and her therapist was like, would you like to unpack this? And she's like, no.
Not yet.
I'm not ready. And I was like, I get it. Like, it was crazy, especially so we're from the Midwest. So because we were experiencing that in LA, like we're seeing all of this, like no one understanding what we're dealing with, what she was dealing with. I mean, and we lived in Hollywood, our first stint. And so we walked outside and we lived on Hollywood, like right by Hollywood Boulevard. And there was no one, like apocalyptic. Like I mean, it was insane. And you can't explain that to Midwest people that aren't seeing it. Like, it was just nuts. It was crazy nuts. So all that to say, I don't know what I'm saying. It was insane. So we ended up staying in LA for 8 months. She left that hospital, went to a way better hospital, USC, didn't work in a COVID unit for a while, which was really nice for her. She got a break. And then we're in Dallas now. We went to Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that was awesome, but the restrictions are crazy, like 10 p.m. lockdown, like, just we've been in lockdown all year. It's fine. But she didn't work in a COVID unit in Portland either, which was really nice. But we just got to Dallas. It wasn't supposed to be a COVID unit, but turns out COVID's really bad. And now it is. Turns out it's a 33-bed ICU, which is huge. And 31 of the beds are COVID. So she came home yesterday and she's casually, well, I guess I'm in a COVID unit. I'm like, oh God. So I don't know what life is going to look like.
We know a lot more.
Yes.
And has she got her vaccine yet?
She was supposed to get it in Portland, but her contract ended like literally the day they started giving them out. So she's getting it here, which is exciting. Great. Yes, we know so much more. They know how to take care of people so much better. We have way more PPE. It's just not the same as it was when it first hit. I mean,
but it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel the same.
Right.
I'm excited for what's next for you as an artist, as you continue to, and guys, you can say, I heard her first on the Making Spaces podcast. Ivy King is your stage name. Check out so the last question I have, if you have one bit of like tangible advice, if you think through your whole story that we're so grateful that you shared and we're willing to share. Because when I asked you on this podcast, you're like, what do you want me to do? And an email didn't go through. So you just were like, all right, let's just do it. Jump in. So if you have one tangible advice as you think through your story and you think through how can people make space for themselves or others, and you can choose yourself or others, like what's one thing that you can do, whether it's one thing you can do today or one thing you can do in general, just take this question wherever you want it.
Okay, you kind of paused through half of that because of the internet.
Oh, I said, is there one tangible thing that people can do to make space for themselves or others? And you can take that question however you want it. It can be something that they can do today or just in general.
Well, how you can make space for other people, I'll answer that one. That one is easy. Just listen to people, try to hear their stories without judgment. And if you don't understand somebody, especially somebody that's coming to you in a really vulnerable state, do your best not to make weird faces at them. And to do your best to accept people where they're at. And because that's really hard to do. It's hard for me to do sometimes for things I don't understand. But when people are coming to you in that state, they need really big open arms so that they can flourish later. And then for making spaces for yourself, I think for a long time, like for me, I had to make space for myself because I was forced to do it, like because of places not accepting me or etc. But I finally am like, I think the way to make space for yourself is just do really scary things, like do hard things. The thing that really petrifies you the most is probably the thing you need to leap out and do out of faith.
Amen.
Sometimes Josie and I joke, but like oftentimes the last like 20 minutes, we'll have like all these long conversations with people and they're fun and they're great. But the last 20 minutes, I'll be like, I get goosebumps. People give some of their like, whoa thing. And then you can just talk forever. But the thing that scares you the most is often the thing you should do the most. That's a big one, friends. It's the scary thing. It's the thing that separates people, really. Some people are willing to take that nudge, if you want to call it the spirit, if you want to call it your inner voice, whatever you want to call it. Oftentimes that thing is speaking to us and we're so afraid. And so even if this show, if all it does is highlight people who have heard that voice and stepped into it, it's been worth all of the effort. So thank you for joining us, Ivy. Where can people find you? How can people find you? How do they find you on Spotify?
on Spotify, I'm I.V King. I think it'll work just Ivy King. And then same thing, Instagram's I.V_King. And then if anybody does Facebook, it's the same. I don't really do Facebook, but King is actually Shelby's maiden name, which is where I got my artist name from. I wanted to
that.
Yeah. I wanted my artist name to because she took my last name, but I was like, I'm going to take yours for my creative purposes. So
perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, please look me up. I'm on every sound thing, all of the social sounds, the Amazons, the Spotify, the Apples, all of them. Yeah, and
we're excited.
There's more coming soon.
Yes. Josie, where can people find us?
You can find us firstly at our website, makingspacesPodcast.com, which has everything on it. But if you want to find us otherwise, Instagram at Making Spaces Podcast. We don't have a Facebook because we're weird. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/makingspacesPodcast, where you can support us monthly. And you'll get quarterly cool stuff like prints and makers boxes and other cool stuff we come up with. You can find me at Josie Takes the World, and Sarah, you can find her at Rev Sarah Heath on Instagrams.
Thanks so much, friends, for joining us for this new year. Same us, but lots of great content. I'm so grateful for all of you. So we'll catch you here next week where we'll be
saving a space for you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.